He lived in another time, and with every word she wrote, their worlds grew closer. Rain drifted down the glass towers like silver threads, drawing long vertical lines through the city's endless glow. No one looked up anymore. The streets pulsed with the hush of motionless sound, delivery drones gliding, holographic ads whispering, footsteps muffled by polymer walkways. Even laughter had become filtered, softened by algorithms designed to prevent emotional spikes. The air itself hummed with data. Madison Lorne walked through that hum as though she were transparent. Each day she passed faces lit by hovering screens, tiny blue ghosts that reflected in hollow eyes. She kept her own gaze low, her hands clasped inside her coat to hide the faint stains of ink that never quite washed away. She worked at the Bureau of Digital Continuity, a place where history went to die quietly. Long rows of glass cabinets stretched across the floor, filled with books, diaries, and letters awaiting their final conversion. Her job was to scan them, transform the words into code, and press delete. Every loop of handwriting became sterile light before the paper itself was dropped into a reclamation chute and reduced to gray dust. But Madison had developed a private rebellion. When no one was watching, she paused before erasing. She traced each curve of handwriting with her finger, memorizing the rhythm of a stranger's hand, whispering, "You belonged to someone once, and someone belonged to you." Her co-worker, Sora Lynn, glided past, tablet hovering beside her shoulder. "Talking to ghosts again?" she teased. "They're better listeners than most," Madison murmured. "Ink doesn't feel, Madison. Code does. At least code remembers." Sora moved on, her shoes soundless on the polished floor. When the overhead lights dimmed for the nightly system sweep, Madison lingered. She gathered fragments that the scanners rejected, edges of letters, bits of browned pages, and wrapped them in paper twine. The scraps rustled softly, like dry leaves. She hid them inside her satchel, a secret cargo of forgotten voices. Her apartment was small, barely larger than a storage cell. The walls were smooth and empty, designed to absorb sound and emotion alike. She'd stripped away the Bureau's mandatory smart surfaces, leaving only shelves she'd built herself. On them sat contraband things, a cracked ink bottle, a fountain pen, repaired from scavenged parts, folded sheets of rescued paper. At night, she lit a single candle. Its glow trembled in the filtered air, fragile and stubborn. She would write, not for anyone, not for upload, not for any network, simply to remember what her own voice sounded like when it wasn't predicted by an algorithm. Her pen moved slowly, scratching softly in the quiet. Tonight the rain feels heavier. Maybe it remembers the weight of oceans. Maybe I'm the only one who still listens to it fall. When she finished, she folded the page, sealed it, and set it aside. No one would ever read it, but it steadied her heartbeat to know it existed. She rose to pour tea, and that was when she saw it. A white envelope lay on the floor by her door. Her building used retinal locks and motion sensors. No courier could have reached inside. Yet the envelope was real. Thick paper, edges rough, her name written in dark ink. Madison Lorne, City Sector 9, Unit 6. The handwriting was graceful, looping, impossibly human. She touched it. The paper was faintly warm, and a scent of rain and cedar rose from it, like a memory half remembered. Inside, on cream stock, a single line.
"Do you still believe words can carry warmth without a voice? C.V. Corin Vale."
She read it again and again until the candle guttered low. No sender address, no code trace, no record in her door's sensor log. It shouldn't exist, and yet it did. She sat there a long time, listening to the rain. Somewhere deep in the building, the filtration fan sighed. Her rational mind searched for an answer. A prank, a staged retro art piece, maybe even a glitch in one of the Bureau's nostalgia campaigns. But none of those explanations accounted for the pulse she felt in her fingertips when she touched the ink, as if it were alive beneath the surface. For days, she carried the letter folded in her pocket, rereading it between tasks. When she ran the bureau's scanners, she half expected it to disintegrate in her hands like the others, but it never aged, never smudged. By the fourth evening, she couldn't stand it any longer. She sat at her desk, unfolded a sheet of rescued paper, and set her pen to it. The nib trembled. "You asked if I believe words can carry warmth. If this reaches you, then yes." The words felt strange, daring. She sealed the letter, but then stared at it in despair. There was no address, nowhere to send it. She placed it on the counter, meaning to forget it, but sleep refused to come. Just before dawn, she put on her coat and stepped into the wet streets. The city at that hour was quiet, washed in blue. In an alley between shuttered shops stood an old postal box, half hidden by scaffolding, its paint flaked to rust. She'd passed it countless times, but never noticed it fully until now. Something about its stillness drew her. The slot gaped open like a mouth waiting to speak. She hesitated, rain collecting on her hood. Then she whispered, "You found your way to me once. Maybe you'll find your way again." She slipped the envelope through the slot. The letter fell into darkness. She couldn't see it land. The metal should have echoed hollow, but the sound was swallowed almost instantly. A faint breath of warm air brushed her cheek, carrying that same cedar scent she remembered. She touched the box once more, the metal no longer cold from the rain, and stepped back. Foolish, perhaps, but her pulse quickened anyway. That evening, she returned from work to find a thin amber line of light glowing under her apartment door. When she opened it, darkness greeted her, but on her desk lay another envelope. Her breath caught. The handwriting was the same.
I thought the world had forgotten how to answer, but your words found me even through silence. CV.
Madison sat down slowly, the city's mechanical hum fading into silence. She traced the letters with trembling fingers, and for the first time in years, she smiled. The paper beneath her hand felt alive, warm, pulsing faintly, like the echo of a heartbeat she could almost hear. Outside, rain whispered against the window. Inside, a single candle flared, its flame bending toward the letter as if drawn by invisible breath. And somewhere, perhaps in another place, perhaps in another time, a man smiled too, unfolding a page that smelled faintly of rain and cedar, and began to write again. The next morning dawned pale and soundless, a colorless light sliding down the glass towers. Madison hardly slept. The letter from CV lay beside her bed, its edges curling slightly, as if from warmth rather than humidity. She traced the ink with her thumb, still half expecting it to dissolve into dream. When she arrived at the bureau, her movements felt weightless, automatic. The scanner's light swept across pages, yet every word she saw transformed into his handwriting. I thought the world had forgotten how to answer. Forgotten, yes. She had been living in forgetting for years. By midday, she couldn't keep still. She opened her satchel, drew out another sheet of rescued paper, and began to write. I don't know who you are or how this is possible, but I believe you meant the words you sent me. If letters can still travel, then I'll keep writing, even if no one else does. She sealed it carefully, feeling foolish and exhilarated at once. When the evening shift ended, she returned to the alley. The old postal box waited under the dim orange streetlight, its surface beaded with rain. The city's drones skimmed overhead, oblivious. Her fingers lingered on the envelope. Please reach him, she whispered, and slid it into the slot. The faint hum again, like the sound of breathing through iron. Then nothing. That night, as she lit her candle, her heart already knew. Another envelope rested on her desk.
I have waited a long time for an answer. I thought the air had gone still. You've made it move again. CV.
Madison pressed her palm over the words, her pulse matching their rhythm. She didn't understand, yet she didn't want to. Some mysteries are too fragile for explanation. She wrote back immediately, the candle sputtering beside her. "What do you wait for? And where are you?" Her question sat between them like held breath. Days slipped into weeks. The letters continued, always appearing after dusk, always written in that same elegant hand. Sometimes they were only a few lines, sometimes pages. He wrote of rivers and wind, of hills beyond cities that no longer existed, of the taste of rain when the world was young. His words painted places she had only seen in archived photographs. Meadows, libraries, music that wasn't compressed into silence.
When I walk beside the river, the mist carries voices. I think they are the echoes of unwritten things. CV.
She began to reply with her own memories, fragments of her world, the mechanical rain that fell from condensers, the quiet halls of the bureau, the way people spoke to glass instead of to one another. She confessed that she feared she was disappearing, pixel by pixel. Each time she sent a letter, she wondered if it might be the last. Each time, the next one arrived. Her routine changed. She left her devices powered down, her hollow wall dark. The neighbors noticed her absence from the communal net and filed polite digital inquiries. She ignored them. In the hush between messages, her life became color again. One evening, while writing, she heard a soft knock. For a heartbeat, she thought it was him. But it was Sora Lynn at the door, holding a bureau tablet. "Madison, your status logs show long gaps. Are you all right?" "I'm fine," Madison said quickly. Sora's gaze moved past her shoulder, noting the candle, the paper, the ink stains. Her expression faltered. "You're still doing that?" "It helps me think." "It's dangerous," Sora said quietly. "They scan for analog traces now, even private dwellings. You know the policy." "I'm careful." Sora hesitated, then sighed. "You always were the sentimental type." She turned to go. "Just don't let them find you keeping ghosts." When the door closed, Madison sat back at her desk. Keeping ghosts. The words lingered. Maybe that's exactly what she was doing. That night, she asked him, "Are you alive?" The reply came 2 nights later, written on rough paper that looked older than anything she had ever touched.
Once. Perhaps still. Time here moves differently. The air shimmers when I write, and I can almost hear the future breathing. If that future is you, then I am still alive somewhere within it. CV.
Madison's breath caught. She read the line again and again, the candle's flame reflecting in her eyes. "I can almost hear the future breathing." She touched the page. The ink shimmered faintly, silver under her fingertips. Not an illusion. The letters themselves seemed to pulse when she read them aloud. For the first time, she allowed the thought, he might not be in her world at all. Days passed, and their letters grew longer, more intimate. He asked about the sound of her city, the way she said her own name, what color the rain became when touched by light. She asked about the seasons in his time, whether people still wrote to those they loved. Each answer arrived wrapped in wonder. He told her he was a cartographer once, drawing maps of rivers that no longer flowed, that he began writing letters to the future when his own world started to dim, when the last post offices closed and the machines took their place. "I thought if I wrote hard enough," he said, "perhaps one line might slip through." And one had. Madison's apartment filled with letters now, stacked in neat bundles tied with thread. The candlelight turned their edges gold. When she touched them, the faint hum beneath her fingertips felt like the heartbeat of another life. Outside, the Bureau announced new surveillance directives. Analog contraband would be sought and destroyed. "Ink carries contamination," the message warned. "Paper absorbs identity." She laughed softly at that. For once, The system had said something true. One storm-soaked evening, she returned to find her latest letter waiting. But this one was different. The paper was damp, edges blurred, as if it had traveled through real weather. The handwriting trembled slightly.
They are taking the archives here too. The shelves are emptying. I don't know how much longer I can write, but I will keep trying until the ink runs out. If this is the last you receive, remember that you are proof it worked. CV.
Her throat tightened. She wrote back through tears. Don't stop. I'm here. I'll keep answering. You're not alone. She slipped the letter into the old postbox, pressing her hand against the cold metal longer than usual. Please, reach him, she whispered. The rain drowned her voice, but something, a warmth, a faint vibration, answered through the iron. When she returned home, the candle refused to light for a moment, sputtering in defiance. Then it steadied, burning brighter than before. On the wall behind her, the shadow of the flame curved upward, the faint outline of a man's silhouette leaning close, though no one stood there. Madison turned slowly. The room was empty. Still, she smiled. "Good night, Corin Vale," she whispered. The candle's flame dipped once, as if in reply. Autumn came without color. The city adjusted its climate panels, dimming the sun to regulation levels. Even the rain changed, thin, mechanical, perfectly timed to rinse the streets. Madison sat at her desk, surrounded by neat bundles of letters, each tied with faded thread. The candlelight made their edges glow like pressed gold. Every night she read one at random, tracing the ink until the air seemed to hum faintly, as if the words themselves still breathed. But something in that hum had shifted. It came slower now, quieter, like a heartbeat struggling to keep rhythm. The Bureau's new announcements filled every corridor. Analog contraband will be seized. Unauthorized handwriting indicates memory contamination. Report offenders immediately. They said it calmly, with the assurance of moral hygiene. Sora stopped her one evening outside the archive hall. "You've heard, haven't you? They're sending audit drones to private residences." Madison nodded. "They won't find anything." Sora hesitated. "Just promise me, whatever you're doing, stop. I can't protect you." But she didn't stop. That night she wrote by the smallest flicker of flame, her window shutters drawn tight. The paper beneath her hand felt colder than usual. The city feels different tonight. I can't explain it, like someone is listening who shouldn't be. Are you safe? She sealed the letter quickly and carried it through the alleys to the old postal box. The scaffolding had been removed. Demolition signs hung from the nearby walls. For the first time, she noticed a faint crack in the iron slot. When she pressed her letter through, the metal shivered like a living thing. The next morning she waited, half dreaming through her shift. When she came home, there was nothing. No envelope, no scent of cedar, only silence. The night stretched long. She lit another candle. The wax melted down and pooled, flickering against the wall. Still nothing. Days passed, then a week. The emptiness began to ache. She wrote again anyway. "Corin, if something's wrong, I'll keep writing until you answer, even if no one ever does. I'll still believe you're reading." Her handwriting trembled. When she slid the letter into the box, she whispered, "Please." No warmth this time, no sound, just rain. At the Bureau, the crackdown deepened. Paper shipments were banned. The reclamation chutes roared night and day, consuming what remained of the archives. On the 12th day without a letter, she found Sora standing at her station, eyes wide. "They're searching quarters in your sector," she whispered. "The auditors are using scent detectors now, trace compounds from old ink. You have to burn it all." Madison's throat tightened. "If I do, he'll disappear." Sora looked at her as if seeing her for the last time. "Then both of you will." She turned away, unwilling to betray but too afraid to stay. Madison left early, her satchel heavy with the last of their letters. She walked home through streets lit by sterile blue light, every camera eye blinking awake as she passed. That night she stacked the bundles in her bathtub, the only metal container she had. The candle flame wavered in the steam of her breath. She hesitated, match poised. She couldn't do it. Instead, she opened one letter, the first he'd ever written beyond that opening question. I used to think silence was empty, but it's full of waiting. Perhaps that's what I've become. Waiting made solid. Her tears blurred the ink. She pressed the page to her chest and whispered, "I'm still here." Then she heard it, a faint sound beneath the rain. Not from her apartment, but from somewhere deeper, like paper sliding across metal. She ran to the door. Nothing. But on the floor, an envelope. Her knees weakened as she lifted it. The wax seal was cracked, the paper damp. The handwriting shook slightly, as if the hand that wrote it trembled from exhaustion.
They've begun erasing us, not the archives, us, those who remember. I feel the air thinning when I write. If the letters stop coming, it's because there's nothing left of this place to send them from. But don't stop believing. Sometimes belief itself keeps the ink alive. CV.
Madison pressed her hand to her mouth to keep from crying out. The room blurred, candlelight stretching into halos. She could almost hear his voice inside the words, faint but real. She sat down, pen shaking in her grip. "I won't stop, I swear it. Whatever happens, you'll keep existing in these pages. I'll write you back into being if I have to." Her tears fell, leaving small dark blooms across the paper. She didn't wipe them away. She sealed the letter and ran barefoot through the rain to the old postbox. The demolition signs flapped like torn flags. She knelt in the puddles and pushed the envelope through. For a heartbeat, nothing. Then, a pulse of warmth through the iron, like the heartbeat of the world itself. She closed her eyes and whispered, "Please, let it reach him." When she returned home, the candle had burned out. The window fogged with condensation. She wiped a small circle clear and stared at the skyline, the endless towers reflecting themselves into infinity. Then, slowly, in the reflection, a second silhouette appeared beside her own. A man's outline, faint and pale, standing where no one stood. Her breath caught. The shadow moved as if turning toward her. Then the light flickered, and it was gone. Madison's pulse thundered in her ears. She turned back to the empty room. On her desk lay a single fresh page, blank except for one faint line in silver ink. "Keep writing." The word glowed softly before fading, absorbed back into the paper. She reached out, touched the place where it had been. The warmth lingered. And somewhere beyond the reach of her world, Corin Vale picked up his pen again, drawing strength from the pulse that crossed the silence between them. Winter arrived unnoticed. The bureau dimmed the daylight hours to conserve energy. People forgot what morning felt like. Madison had stopped counting the days since the last letter appeared. Her walls were bare now, every trace of her hidden collection sealed inside a small metal case beneath the floorboards. She lived in silence, listening for sounds that no longer came. Sometimes, at night, she thought she heard the faint scrape of pen on paper beneath the hum of the city. Each time she turned, there was nothing but the candle's flicker and the hollow breath of ventilation. Yet the feeling persisted, that she was being written back into being, word by word, from far away. One morning, the Bureau issued its final notice. All analog relics are to be surrendered for destruction. Non-compliance will be considered a breach of civic integrity. Drones swept through the district, their red lights tracing the windows. Madison packed her few belongings, ink, pen, the first letter he had ever sent, and slipped out before dawn. She didn't know where she was going, only that staying meant erasure. The streets were empty. Snow fell like paper ash, dissolving before it touched the ground. She walked toward the outskirts, where the glass towers gave way to rusting industrial husks. Every block grew darker, quieter. Her breath clouded in the frozen air. The city's signal faded from her earpiece until only static remained. She found the alley again, or what was left of it. The old postal box stood half-buried beneath scaffolding, streaked with frost. Someone had spray-painted a demolition code across its front. She brushed the ice from the slot and rested her gloved hand on the iron. It was cold now, lifeless. "I kept writing," she whispered. "You told me to, and I did." The wind carried her words into silence. She turned to leave, and stopped. The paper she'd kept tucked inside her coat, the last blank page she owned, fluttered against her chest. For a reason she couldn't name, she drew it out, placed it flat against the metal, and began to write. If belief keeps the ink alive, then let this be proof. Wherever you are, Corin Vale, I'm still here. When she finished, she folded the page, sealed it with the stub of her candle wax, and pushed it through the slot. The sound of its fall was soft, almost tender, like the exhale of something grateful. Then the air around her warmed. A faint glow seeped from the crack beneath the door of the box, golden against the snow. Madison stepped back, breath trembling. The light faded as quickly as it came, leaving only the gray of morning. But the warmth lingered against her fingertips. She walked until the city disappeared behind her, replaced by skeletal trees and the long whisper of wind across frozen fields. The old transit roads had crumbled into silence. She followed instinct more than direction, guided by a pulse she felt beneath her ribs, something leading her forward. For days she wandered, sleeping in abandoned rest stations, eating little. The letters inside her mind became her compass, each one whispering a line, a scent, a promise. On the third day, she descended into a valley where snow melted into fog. A river ran there, not the synthetic channels of the city, but real water, clear and alive, moving with quiet purpose. The air smelled of cedar and rain. She followed the current until she saw it, a small red postbox standing beside the water, half-tilted, paint gleaming beneath frost. She stopped, her heart stuttering. It resembled the postbox from the city, but not exactly. This one had no keyhole, no seam, no lock, only a faint golden light beneath its surface, as if it had been shaped from memory rather than metal. Madison approached slowly. The wind lifted her hair, carrying the scent of ink and candle wax. She touched the box, and warmth spilled through her palm, climbing up her arm like sunlight through water. The slot was already open. Inside rested a single envelope. Her name. Her knees weakened. She drew it out carefully, afraid the motion would break the spell. The handwriting was the same, steady, elegant, impossibly alive.
The ink remembers. Follow the river. I will wait where it bends toward dawn. CV.
Her tears came without warning. She pressed the letter to her chest and turned east, walking along the riverbank. The mist thickened, turning the world into watercolor. She followed the curve of the water until the land opened into a small clearing. There, beside the bend, stood an old stone bench half covered in moss. And beyond it, a figure. He was exactly as she had imagined, tall, dark coat brushed with frost, hair lifting gently in the breeze. His outline shimmered faintly, as though light itself were trying to hold him together. He smiled when he saw her, that quiet, knowing smile she had seen 100 times in her mind.
Madison,
he said, and his voice sounded like memory, familiar yet newly born. She couldn't speak. She walked toward him, each step slower than the last, afraid he would vanish if she moved too fast. When she reached him, she stopped close enough to feel the warmth radiating from his presence. He was real, and yet not, solid, yet shimmering like reflection on water.
I thought the letters would be enough,
He said softly.
but they began to fade. I feared you would too.
You kept me alive, she whispered. Every word, every line. He reached out, his hand hovering just short of her cheek.
It seems the letters were never just words, they were bridges.
She leaned forward until their fingers touched. The moment they did, the world exhaled. Light burst through the valley, not blinding, but gentle, filled with the scent of cedar and rain. The snow melted where it fell. Her candle flame, miles away in the city, flared one last time and went out. For a heartbeat, Madison saw everything at once. The bureau, the glass towers, the postboxes rusting beneath frost, and the thousands of letters she had saved. They rose like birds of light, their pages unfolding into sky. She turned back to Corin. What happens now? He smiled.
Now you stop waiting.
His hand closed around hers. It felt human, warm, alive. The valley shimmered, colors deepening to gold and rose as the dawn arrived. Around them the letters drifted down, blank pages catching the light, covering the river until it shone like liquid paper. Madison breathed in, tasting rain and ink. I was never meant to forget, was I?
No,
Corin said.
you were meant to remember what it feels like to believe.
The wind rose, swirling around them. The river glowed brighter. For a moment she thought she might dissolve into light, but instead the warmth solidified, grounding her. She could feel his heartbeat beneath her fingers, steady, real. They stood as the dawn broke fully, the first true sunrise the world had seen in decades. In the distance, the city lights flickered and dimmed, bowing to something older than circuitry. When the light softened, she looked down. The letters around them had become lilies, their petals white and luminous, floating across the water's surface. She laughed through her tears, and Corin's laughter joined hers, low and human and beautiful. He touched her cheek, brushing away the last trace of ink.
You wrote me back into existence.
She shook her head. You reminded me how. They stood in silence as the river carried their reflections downstream. Two figures intertwined, half light, half shadow, both utterly real. Later, when the wind stilled, Madison placed her final letter inside the postbox by the river. No address, no name, only words. To whoever still believes, write back. She closed the slot and turned toward the horizon. The valley was quiet again, the air filled with soft gold. Corin walked beside her, his hand still warm in hers. Far away in the city she had left behind, people began to notice strange things. Candle flames flickering for no reason, scraps of blank paper appearing on desks, the faint smell of rain and cedar drifting through sealed apartments. And somewhere, a single abandoned postbox glowed softly in the dark. If you like this story, please like, share, and subscribe. It helps this channel grow. Thanks for watching.